Good morning, and I would say happy Friday, but it's not Friday. On Friday, I did film this video and it didn't have any sound, so I'm now filming it again. Okay, so that's exciting. Let's start off the video, which is an introduction. Today I'm gonna go over like Ehlers-Danlos myths. I don't know that they're necessarily myths, but they're things that I find when I look back at my childhood, I thought was normal, or well, okay, my parents always told me to be different. So I guess, and I was an only child. So I guess we don't really know what like normal was, but now I look back on them and I'm like, well, that was really abnormal. So again, the reason why I do this video or this whole channel in general is because I want people to share their experiences with everything. You know, I talk about fair skin, I talk about Ehlers-Danlos. So please share if you have any, anecdotes about what you grew up with and things that even go on now that you're like, okay, that might not be something that is textbook Ehlers-Danlos, but I deal with it and I think it's abnormal and it's got to be due to the Ehlers-Danlos. So, okay, so starting off, one thing that was weird in terms of skin manifestations is when I was younger, I'm not sure the age, I should have probably found out, but I had the chickenpox. It was diagnosed as chickenpox, the rash, everything, and it went away in a day. So obviously that was unusual. I was exposed multiple times in like high school, and I never got it. So we just assumed, yeah, I had the chickenpox. I had it for a day. That's kind of weird. And then when I went to med school, I got my titers, and I didn't have any immunity towards chickenpox. So it probably wasn't. I had to have the vaccine. So that was something, I don't know if it's related, but it's just a skin thing. And if any of you could, relate, I know that I'm not sure if it's with the Ehlers-Danlos, but I know that I do have really quick skin turnover. But I mean, obviously you can't like clear the chickenpox virus in a day. So that was weird. And then, as pretty much everybody knows, is just in general kind of like skin stuff. When I would get a scratch or something like that, like I even have, I don't think it's going to show up on camera, but like on my hand, and of course now with the lighting, I can't even see it that much, but like I had just a minor injury and then it did turn into a little scar. So things like that makes sense. The weird thing, and I think I had mentioned this in other videos, is bruising. I could like walk into a wall and I will not bruise, but little things cause bruising. So for example, earlier this week, I was hanging I wasn't hanging the chandelier, but I was hanging the little, this is crooked, I don't know. I was hanging the little like crystals that come down from it. And so each one I had to hang separately and I had no good way of like holding them. So I had to keep getting off the ladder, getting back on, hanging the crystal, getting off, getting back on. And I would use that top part of the ladder for support. So I was leaning my shins against the top part of the ladder, 40 times. And it didn't hurt when I was doing it. But then the next morning I woke up and I had all these bruises on my shins and they were really tender and swollen. So that's an example of like a little thing that doesn't even cause any pain versus like walking into something and it caused bruising. So that would be another skin manifestation. I don't know if I had that when I was younger, but I suspect that I probably did. And I'm looking down at my notes. I don't care, because like I said, I've filmed this twice. So I want to make sure I don't miss anything. Another skin thing was when I was little, and even now, I could be out in the sun without any sunscreen, which again, obviously, as you know, if you follow my channel, I definitely do not promote that. But I could be out in the sun without any sunscreen all day and I don't burn, I don't tan, I don't change color at all. So even when I was little, my parents said we would go to Mexico and I would be out like all day, very fair skinned. I had sunscreen on. Obviously, my parents like put sunscreen on me, but people would be like, maybe you should like have her come in, from the sun because she's so fair. And they were like, she doesn't change color. My dad can tan, like he can just think about being tan and he'll get tan. So it's definitely not something genetic. It's just, I'm like a freak of nature with that. And I continue to be that way. And if you look at my video of how I used to get really tan in order to hide my translucent pale skin when I was younger, when you see that picture of how tan I was, it was like a major effort to get that tan. I still don't even know how I did it, but I did it. But that was something that was really unusual. And again, if anyone else has that same tendency or weird kind of reaction in the sun or lack of reaction, let me know. Those were probably, and then obviously like slow healing. I mean, I can't say that I noticed slow healing. I would say that I noticed abnormal healing. So when I had a basal cell on my shoulder, the scar, you know, it didn't heal very well, but it wasn't like slow healing. When I got bitten by a dog, I had, you know, I have scars still on my hands. Again, I'm not sure if you could see those, but they healed quickly, but they healed, abnormally with scars. So that's just something that we know. And then odd injuries. Definitely still to this day, I have odd injuries. You know, I have to take my time doing things because I injure myself like just doing daily activities. So for example, when I was in my surgery rotation as a medical student, it was my first rotation. And I remember we had to round on patients. I think we had to round on patients at like 5 a.m. So I would get there so early in order to, you know, put my stuff in the locker, get my scrubs on, and like go and talk to the patients and then write their notes. And my surgery attending, or no, he was the surgery resident was like, we got in an argument because he was like, why do you have to get here so early to do things? You have to be more efficient. And I'm like, because I need more time to do things. And I realized that it wasn't that like I wasn't being efficient seeing the patients and that kind of thing, but it was more like it takes me a long time to like put stuff away and like, you know, have my backpack with all my books and, you know, putting that away and like changing into my scrubs and getting the correct ergonomic set up in order to be able to do a note and to talk to a patient. So that's what took me longer, but I never really understood that. So we got in a fight about that. And that was a great way to start off my first rotation as a med student. But I did do well. I got an A, but still, again, that's not the best thing to do, but whatever. So that was that. Let's see what else. So, you know, I just take longer with doing things. And then, of course, I know this is normal for pretty much everybody with this condition, but subluxations of all the joints. And before I was diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos, I had what was called cuboid syndrome. And it's where the cuboid dislocates. So it's a bone in your foot, it dislocates. And when a bone dislocates, it's extremely painful. And what I've noticed is that I have dislocations that when they first dislocate, it's extremely painful. And then I almost get like used to them. Or maybe my body gets used to them. So I had bilateral cuboid dislocations. I had bone scans. I had all these tests because I was in so much pain. And all the imaging, like the x-rays, static MRIs, that's key. Static MRIs, meaning I was just laying there, all were normal. And I was like, I am in, you know, and I have a high pain tolerance. I was like, I'm in so much pain. And it took two things. It took a podiatrist being like, yeah, your cuboid keeps coming out of place. And what was that called? It's an MRI where basically like a motion MRI where you're taking different shots, like when you're doing different movements of the feet. Those two things diagnosed that my cuboid kept coming out of place. So I still deal with that cuboid, the sesamoid, which is like the bone in the ball of the foot, my elbows, and my shoulders. So that's something that we know, you know. And just one myth, because I know, you know, I said these were like myths. I don't know that they're really myths, but people think that because we're so hyper flexible that we don't need to stretch, that kind of thing. I find that the best thing that I could do for myself is to use a roller. So I'm not like stretching, because when I stretch, I find that I have an ability to hyperextend. So using one of those foam rollers and rolling out any tight muscles really helps to balance things. But then I also kind of prefer to be a little bit tight. There's a fine line in muscle tightness. So for example, fine line, meaning like if my calves get really tight, then I start to have tightness in my foot, which can then cause the cuboid to dislocate. So I have to roll out my calves. If I stretch my calves, then I tend to hyperextend my knee. So rolling out my calves is extremely helpful. I used to do yoga, but I found that made me much more prone to a lot of hyperextensions. So now I do things that more focus on like muscle building. So that's the goal, for that. And I'm trying to think what else. So that's just like a misconception that people with Ehlers-Danlos, well, it's not a misconception. We are hyper flexible, but you have to find that good balance for you. And I find the balance for me is rolling out things that are tight so that I don't hyperextend, and then making sure that I stay muscular so that I can, I have to focus on more muscle building type things so that I can keep my muscles, kind of like keeping the joints in place. And then things like I used to run a ton, but now I just can't because it's not fun anymore. I find my shoulder hurts, my feet obviously hurt. So that's just not fun anymore for me. So walking is a nice way to kind of like loosen things up, but in a way I walk on a high incline. So, it's still kind of like muscle building, and it's not just like leisurely walking. Like I can't go out and leisurely walk with a friend because it causes a lot of joint issues with me. So I have to have kind of like I'm not a good like team sport person. Let's put it that way. Okay. So I don't do like group sessions at the gym, that kind of thing. I'm just better focusing on myself when I'm doing activity. So I think those were the things I wanted to bring up. This video was a little bit shorter than the original one, so I hope I didn't miss anything, but please definitely share below. Let me know if you have anything that you thought was unusual. And again, this channel is all about sharing. I love the comments that I see because I think that we all really help each other so much. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week.